The situation in Israel's north continues to escalate as Israel admits it killed a top Hezbollah commander, and the terror group slams Israel with hundreds of rockets. Hezbollah has threatened further attacks, while the U.S. is calling on both sides to use restraint. More from ILTV's editor-in-chief, Mayan Hoffman.
Sirens continued to blare across northern Israel on Thursday, following a Shavuot holiday marred by rockets and fires as Hezbollah and the IDF exchanged attacks across the border. This morning, the IDF spokesperson reported that overnight Wednesday, fighter jets attacked military buildings in Ayat al-Shab in southern Lebanon and other terrorist infrastructure in Einata. Around 5 a.m., alarms sounded in the communities of Yechiam and Khalil in the western Galilee. Later, the IDF announced that an interceptor was launched at a suspected target, which turned out to be a false alarm. The warning was triggered by concerns about falling interceptor debris. About an hour later, alarms also sounded in Moshav Shtula, and sirens continued throughout the day. More than 200 rockets and missiles were fired by Hezbollah on Wednesday. Fires broke out in many locations, burning thousands of acres. Hezbollah was responding to the killing of Taleb Abdullah, described as the highest-ranking commander eliminated since the war began, with the heaviest barrage in recent months. It is believed that this response is not yet finished. The Israeli strike in the South Lebanon village of Juya late on Tuesday killed 3 Hezbollah fighters alongside the senior field commander. The IDF said that the strikes were carried out by IDF aircraft on a Hezbollah terrorist infrastructure and launch post. A Hezbollah official said on Wednesday that the group vows to increase the intensity, force, and quantity of its operation against Israel after the killing of Taleb Abdallah. The commander made his comments at Abdallah's funeral procession. The U.S. has called on both sides to de-escalate, with Pentagon spokesperson Sabrina Singh saying America does not want to see a wider conflict.
We are seeing an increase in activity in the north, and we don't want things to escalate into a broader regional conflict. And that's something that is not new. That's something that we've said from the very beginning, from when Hamas first launched its brutal attack on October 7th.
Hezbollah and Israel have been exchanging fire since the Gaza war broke out in October. However, the northern border has heated up in recent weeks, and the escalating hostilities have raised fears of a larger conflict between the two heavily armed opponents. An official in Iran's Quds force overseeing Hezbollah told Foreign Policy that Hezbollah now possesses more than 1 million rockets of various types, including precision-guided missiles and modified Katyusha rockets for increased accuracy, as well as anti-tank missiles.
Well, for 8 months, Israelis in the north have been dealing with attacks from Hezbollah across the border. But from what we know so far, it has the potential to be much worse. Here to speak with us about the next steps for Israel is Lieutenant Colonel in Reserve Sarit Zahavi of the Alma Research Center. Sarit, thanks so much for joining us today. Could you start by speaking about the recent assassination that Israel carried out of a senior Hezbollah commander? How important was this move by Israel in the fight against Hezbollah, and will it provoke further violence or do the opposite?
No, killing Hezbollah commanders is very important, since these commanders are not serving in their position only 2 years or 3 years like in the IDF. These guys can spend more than 1 decade at the same position, so definitely they are a center of knowledge and experience, so that's why it's very important to kill them even with operational levels. Having said that, it can't be the strategy of the Israeli government to bring different security situation up north, and the arms caches of Hezbollah must be eliminated, must be dealt, because otherwise we will continue to have this kind of constant fire as we see in the past few days.
Can you tell us a little bit about the people in the north and what happened over this holiday? How was the atmosphere, and how are the communities in the north coping?
First, there are communities that are evacuated. This is 60,000 Israelis in 43 communities that became ghost towns since the beginning of the war, and because of this constant fire, they cannot come back. They were evacuated under the threat of the invasion, just like Hamas had done, which was not completely eliminated. At the same time, there are people like myself, I live 9 kilometers from the Israeli-Lebanese border, that were not evacuated, and we experienced the sounds and the smells and the war itself every day. Now that it's the beginning of the summer, every rocket that falls in open areas, since Iron Dome would not intercept rockets that are falling in open areas, cause fires and a lot of damages and collateral damages in all over the region. We have tens of thousands of dunams that were burned since the war started, including agricultural areas, and of course for those who are not evacuated, to leave the kids home alone, to send them to schools, to go to afternoon activities, to have graduation parties. All of these are daily questions that we are dealing with as parents raising families over here.
I think it's really interesting you brought up the fact that there are evacuated communities, tens of thousands of Israelis who have been out of their home for 8 months. I mean, this isn't a couple weeks we're talking about, so that's an important thing to note. I'm wondering, how can Israel deter Hezbollah? I mean, what is the end game here? Is a war inevitable?
The war deterrence is irrelevant for terrorist organizations that their mission is to destroy the state of Israel no matter what the price would be. All these commanders or military operatives of Hezbollah that are getting killed by the IDF since this campaign started are branded as martyrs on their way to Jerusalem. It's not even about protecting Lebanon. I think we should change the framework and talk about how do we truly deal with the capabilities of Hezbollah to make sure that these capabilities that you now see on the screens, by the way, is not, they are eliminated, they are not threatening us anymore. And I think this is a huge change in perception, in the strategy of the state of Israel. This could be done, by the way, in different ways. It's not just about an all-out war, which everybody's talking about. It's about what do we target? How do we target the munition, the arms caches of Hezbollah? How do we work with the international community to make sure everybody understands that Hezbollah and Iran are a global threat, and that everybody understands what's this campaign all about? And yes, at the same time, how do we build also defensive infrastructures over here in the north, since we don't have shelters the same way the people in the south had. The schools are not protected, the areas where people are going to work are not protected, most of the homes don't have shelters. The situation here is very different from the south, and I think that we should all wake up and work differently after October 7th.
Absolutely. All right, Sarit, well, we are out of time, but I want to thank you so much for your insight. Stay safe.
Thank you.
A ceasefire deal presented by the United States has been rejected by Hamas. The terror organization asked for what U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken described as numerous changes. Will the deal still move forward? More from Mayan Hoffman.
The U.S.-led ceasefire agreement between Hamas and Israel, which has the backing of the United Nations, appears to be stalled. Hamas reportedly proposed several changes to the agreement, some feasible and others not. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken was in the region this week for the 8th time since the October 7th massacre. He met before Shavuot with Israeli leaders, including Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and opposition leaders Benny Gantz and Yair Lapid. He was in Doha on Wednesday, meeting with the Prime Minister. Blinken said last night that everyone he has met with agrees that the ceasefire is the desired path. And while he cannot speak for Hamas, and they may not want to follow this path, Hamas cannot and will not be allowed to decide the future of this region and its people.
12 days ago, President Biden set out a ceasefire proposal rooted in core principles of releasing all the hostages, surging assistance into Gaza, guaranteeing Israel's security, providing a path to an enduring end to war, and starting the massive reconstruction for Gaza. So we were waiting on one response, and that was the response from Hamas. And as the Prime Minister said, last night we received a response. Hamas has proposed numerous changes to the proposal that was on the table.
Hamas denied Blinken's accusations of proposing these numerous changes. Osama Hamdan, a Hamas official, told Al Arabi TV that Blinken was part of the problem, not the solution in the Gaza conflict. However, Hamas stated it wants written guarantees from the United States for a permanent ceasefire and the withdrawal of Israeli forces from the Gaza Strip to agree to the U.S.-backed truce proposal, according to 2 Egyptian security sources cited by Reuters. Another Hamas official told Reuters that a ceasefire must lead to a permanent end to hostilities in Gaza, the withdrawal of Israeli forces, the reconstruction of the Palestinian enclave, and the release of Palestinian prisoners in Israel. The hostage family headquarters responded to the exchange by saying that Hamas's recent statement is a significant part of ongoing negotiations, particularly in advancing the Netanyahu deal, which is Israel's first proposed initiative since the October 7th attack. The headquarters said it endorses Blinken's remarks, indicating optimism about bridging differences, and that all parties are urged to continue negotiations promptly and intensively to address remaining challenges. Blinken also noted that in the coming weeks, the U.S. will present proposals for essential components of a post-conflict plan, addressing governance, security, and reconstruction. This plan is crucial for transitioning from a ceasefire to a lasting resolution of the conflict and establishing a just and lasting peace, the Secretary of State said.
Well, as Israel rejoices at the return of 4 of our hostages, reports on how they were treated in captivity are only beginning to emerge. As harrowing testimonies begin to surface, it's been met with denial from anti-Israel activists. Perhaps most notably on Wednesday, Palestinian-American supermodel Bella Hadid shared a post on social media claiming that former Israeli hostage Almog Ma'ir Jan even received a cake for his birthday from Hamas while in captivity. The insinuation being, of course, that it wasn't that bad for the hostages. Unfortunately, social media has become a breeding ground for this kind of denial of reality, thanks in part to activists like Bella Hadid, who has repeatedly used her platform to spread disinformation about the war in Gaza. The testimonies coming out, however, prove just how obscene and insensitive this dishonest Hamas propaganda is. ILTV's Rachel Safdie has more on what we know the Israeli hostages experienced at the hands of Hamas.
As Shlomi Ziv, Andrei Kozlov, Almog Meir-Jan, and Noah Argamani were rescued from captivity, reports shed light on the psychological terror and physical torture they endured while held by terrorists. The 3 men were in a dark room with no sunlight for 8 months. If the captives didn't adhere to their strict rules, their captors punished them by locking them in the bathroom or covering them with blankets during hot weather, the hostages said. They repeatedly threatened to kill them. While Hamas has denied mistreating the hostages, the Wall Street Journal published reports of repeated physical and psychological abuse suffered by the hostages during their 8 months in Gaza, citing accounts from the abductees' relatives, Israeli security officials, and medical professionals. The hostages passed time by playing cards, studying Arabic, teaching each other Hebrew or Russian, and keeping journals. Families revealed that it was the close bond created by the 3 men that helped them survive. Dr. Itai Pesach, part of the team that treated the released hostages, noted that the captives likely experienced weight fluctuation due to fear, stress, and maltreatment. They showed signs of muscle atrophy, malnutrition, and difficulty performing certain activities. At least 116 Israeli hostages captured on October 7th remain in Gaza. Israel believes that more than 40 of them are dead.
And over Shavuot, the UN's Commission of Inquiry released reports accusing Israel of perpetrating crimes against humanity, including starving the Palestinians in Gaza and withholding essential aid. More on that report from ILTV's Mayan Hoffman.
2 United Nations reports issued during Shavuot have leveled accusations of war crimes against both Israel and Hamas during the early phase of the Gaza conflict. The UN Commission of Inquiry specifically pointed to Israel's actions, attributing them to crimes against humanity due to the significant civilian casualties, including what the report described as acts of extermination. Regarding Israel's actions, the Commission alleged a widespread or systematic attack directed against the civilian population in Gaza. The Commission accused Israel of committing war crimes, such as using starvation as a method of warfare, claiming that Israel neglected to provide essential supplies like food, water, and shelter to the Gazans. The report also alleged sexual and gender-based violence by both Israeli forces and Palestinian terrorists during the early phases of the conflict. The Commission additionally reported a consistent occurrence of sexual violence by Palestinian terror organizations, although it said it couldn't confirm reports of rape. Israel rejected all the allegations and accused the Commission of being biased. The UN Commission to Geneva said the report was reflective of the systematic anti-Israel discrimination of this Commission of Inquiry, which was born in sin in 2021, while Hamas was raining down rockets on Israeli civilians. The Commission said the reports disregard the abhorrent use of human shields by Hamas, the deliberate Hamas strategy of placing civilians in the line of fire. When it comes to Hamas, the Commission concluded that during the October 7th attack, members of Hamas, other Palestinian groups, and civilians deliberately committed war crimes, including killing, injuring, mistreating, taking hostages, and engaging in sexual and gender-based violence against civilians and Israeli security forces. These actions, the Commission said, violate international humanitarian and human rights laws. The Commission also found evidence of desecration of corpses, gender-based violence against women, and the exploitation of children for propaganda purposes, which it deemed particularly egregious. The report is expected to be presented to the UN Human Rights Council next week.
Well, as reported once again, the UN has used what little remains of its credibility to focus on Wait for it. Yep, you guessed it, Israel. The report was riddled with inaccuracies and unfounded accusations against Israel. But in the interest of time, allow me to break it down to three of the core problems in this report. First, it puts a sovereign democratic nation state on the same legal footing as a terrorist organization and equates the legal right to use self-defense with a barbaric, unprovoked, ISIS-style terror attack targeting civilians. Even if Israel acted wrongly, there is no legal or moral basis or equivalence between Israel and Hamas. There are no both sides because they are not part of the same equation. Every life matters, but legally, even civilian casualties are not the same as victims of terrorism. The conflation of the two is unacceptable and irresponsible, especially for a body like the UN. Second, this report accuses Israel of extermination, as if the IDF intended to commit a genocide and eradicate the Palestinian people. This is a shameful lie and one easily disproven by looking at the casualties thus far. The estimate of civilian to combatant ratios is roughly 1-to-1. If the goal was extermination, you would see an astronomically higher number of civilian casualties. Palestinian civilians are not and have not been targeted. Israeli civilians, however, were. Let's not forget the fact that militarily Israel is well within its ability to commit a genocide that is not and has never been the goal of the IDF in this war or in any other. Third, the report accuses both the IDF and Hamas of sexual violence as a method of war. They're proof that the IDF strip-searched terrorists. Meanwhile, Hamas raided a music festival for the purpose of sexual assault, murder, and kidnapping, and then tortured, mutilated, and gang-raped Israeli civilians. Do those sound at all similar to you? Now, as a woman, I truly cannot be silent in response to these outrageous accusations and attempt at moral equivalence. It's an insult to every victim of sexual assault and rape to compare a strip search of terrorists under arrest with the sexual mutilation and gang rape of innocent civilians. Sexual violence as a method of war is not a tactic of the IDF, but it is a tactic of Hamas and its parent organization, the Islamic Republic of Iran. Until the United Nations is able to differentiate between legitimate self-defense and unprovoked terrorism, they should not be looked to as some sort of moral authority, as any sort of moral authority on this conflict or any other. And in high-tech news, the Ministry of Science and Technology has approved Israel's participation in the Hiroshima AI Process Friends Group, an international initiative for developing a safe and responsible policy for artificial intelligence. This comes as the Israeli high-tech industry is being tested in its resilience and robustness, as revealed in the Israeli Innovation Authority Annual 2024 report. Despite negative trends, key figures within Israeli high-tech highlight the immense importance and resilience of the industry. ILTV's Devo Klein has more.
In their annual report, the Israel Innovation Authority revealed the impact of two crises on Israeli high-tech, the legal reform and the Swords of Iron War. These events shook the high-tech industry, and following the 2023 global decline in high-tech investment, tech companies are left to face increasing challenges. As the Israeli high-tech sector works to stay competitive in an environment of intense tech arms races between the West and the axis of non-democratic countries, regional stability and political rifts pose an even greater challenge for the industry that is largely responsible for Israel's economy.
In Israel, we have about 9,000 high-tech companies, including 600 new established in 2023, over 500 multinational development centers, which employing about 90,000 employees, 393 public traded Israeli companies in stock exchange all over the world, which employing 320,000 employees worldwide.
According to the analysis, the report revealed that Israeli high-tech is responsible for 20% of the GDP and 53% of total national export. From 2018 to 2023, the high-tech sector was responsible for over 40% of Israel's GDP growth, an incredible figure that further demonstrates the significance and degree in which the Israeli economy relies on the success of the high-tech sector. While the macroeconomic indicators continue to rise, there are also trends of decline in business activity indicators related to the sector. The growth in high-tech employment has significantly slowed, and various business activity indicators have returned to 2018 levels or earlier. For example, investment in Israeli startups declined by about 55% in 2023, much like the global trend and mostly in correlation to other European hubs, with advanced rounds suffering the most severe blow. Yet the report firmly states that despite the worrying trends, Israeli high-tech is not only capable of bouncing back, but has done so in the past. The Israel Innovation Authority has been taking preventative steps since immediately after the October 7th massacre, offering unique solutions and opportunities, such as the fast-track program for new startups with a short runway, helping companies that were caught in the middle of a funding round, as well as the launch of Yozma 2.0, funds to bring Israeli institutional investors to invest in local VCs and tech companies, and the new venture incubators designed to ensure the germination of future deep tech companies. Israeli high-tech is a pillar for the Israeli economy. Thus, the full recovery and revival of the downturn trends is crucial not only for Israeli startups, but for Israeli people as a whole. And this is an invaluable goal of the Israeli Innovation Authority.
Israel still has all the assets that made it a leading high-tech hub globally. Academic excellence, entrepreneurial spirit, out-of-box thinking, determination, resilience, and culture that accept failure as just another step to success. Despite of all the difficult year we faced, we have to remember that the Israeli high-tech sector delivers no matter what. For us, it's not just a slogan, it's a way of life.
And now, if you're not a new subscriber, you may remember the Hebrew word of the week, where each week, along with eTeacher, we learn a new Hebrew word and relate it to the Bible, current events, and our everyday lives. For more info on the Rosen School of Hebrew, please scan the QR code on your screen or click the link in the description.
Welcome to Hebrew Word of the Week. I'm Ariella, and in this segment, together with eTeacher, we explore the beauty and depth of the Hebrew language. We'll learn a new Hebrew word or phrase and see how it's used in the Bible, current events, and everyday life. Today's Hebrew word is chofesh. It means freedom in Hebrew. Chofesh embodies the idea of liberty, release, and the ability to act independently. It represents a fundamental human right to be free from oppression and coercion. The word chofesh carries deep significance within Hebrew culture and history. It reflects the ethos of liberation and self-determination, particularly emphasized in the story of the Exodus from Egypt. Chofesh signifies the pursuit of justice and the value of individual autonomy. In modern Hebrew, chofesh is used to convey various aspects of freedom, including political, personal, and intellectual freedoms that are essential in contemporary society. Here are some examples of how the word chofesh is used in a sentence. Yesh li hachofesh la'asot ma shani rotza, meaning I have the freedom to do what I want. Or, אנחנו נלחמים על החופש שלנו, meaning we are fighting for our freedom. So, if you're interested in learning more about the Hebrew language, check out eTeacher. This online and live course is the most established Hebrew language instruction institution. You can learn with a time-proven method for every level or start from scratch. eTeacher offers dynamic online courses with live video lessons, weekly webinars, and ample support, and allows you to connect to a lively global community for an enriched learning experience. Scan the QR code or click the link below and visit the eTeacher website today to learn more. I hope you enjoyed learning about the Hebrew word chofesh. Please join us next week for another episode of Hebrew Word of the Week. In the meantime, I encourage you to practice using the word chofesh in your own life, and feel free to share your experiences with us in the comments below.
Let's take a look at the weather forecast. Clear skies and hot weather are expected tonight and over the weekend as temperatures reach lows of only 24 degrees Celsius or 76 degrees Fahrenheit. Tomorrow, non-coastal cities were given excessive heat warnings, and temperatures are set to reach highs of about 38 degrees Celsius or 100 degrees Fahrenheit, and last throughout the weekend. That's all for today's news. For more updates from Israel on all your devices, check out our ILTV channels, subscribe to our ILTV newsletter, and don't forget to check out our website, ILTV.tv, with all the latest news from the heart of the State of Israel. I'm Emily Schrader. Be well, and thank you for watching.